As though missing out on a Bundesliga title for the first time in over a decade wasn't bad enough for Bayern Munich this season, now, as they're supposed to be focused on their biggest match of the season, their first leg Champions League semi-final match against Real Madrid later today, instead their manager Thomas Tuchel is stuck asking questions about comments made by one of his board members that had no business being made. Except what Uli Hoeneß said about Thomas Tuchel was sort of right. But he got it all wrong, and it doesn't mean he should have said it. We're going to break the whole thing down. It's a mess. Here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. So generally speaking, talking trash on your manager a day or two before the biggest game of the season is not a great recipe for success, but there's no real evidence that Uli Hoeneß, the honorary president of Bayern Munich's Board of Governors, wants Thomas Tuchel to succeed, and that's a major problem, even if some of what he said had some validity. We're going to talk about that today, but before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get in that comment section, let me know what you think about this whole situation, because it is a disaster, and I'm not going to come to the defense of too many of the people involved. You can leave your comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub, and of course check out the website, pitchsidepub.com as well. So if you missed it, Uli Hoeneß, who is on the board of Bayern Munich and is the honorary president of the club, said in an interview a couple days ago that Thomas Tuchel essentially is not a good coach, and that he doesn't develop players, and that he just wants Bayern to go out and buy new players instead of improving the ones he had. And he got a little bit of this right, and then he got the rest of it just so utterly wrong that it's so clear that he has an agenda and a vendetta against Tuchel, who he has been outspoken against in the past. The only part he got right is that Tuchel is not a particularly good coach, and that is my personal opinion. And I know it's an outlier of an opinion, and I want to put it in context. I don't mean that he's not a good coach in that he doesn't have good tactics, or that he can't improve players like Alphonso Davies and others that Uli Hoeneß was pointing out. Of all the things you can possibly attack about Thomas Tuchel, his ability to develop young players is not even on the radar. The guy started off as a youth coach at Stuttgart. He coached Augsburg's youth team. He has a strong track record of developing young talent. That is actually one of his strengths. So of all the things to attack, not only was it a weird one, it's just a flat-out wrong one. It's incorrect. And the issue is that Thomas Tuchel gives you plenty of ammunition. You don't need to make things up to criticize Thomas Tuchel. And so for Uli Hoeneß to do this was bizarre, and that doesn't even get into the timing. I'm recording this a few hours before they take on Real Madrid in the Champions League semifinal, and it's the main topic of conversation, and it shouldn't be. And for that, I actually have a lot of sympathy for Thomas Tuchel. Whatever his other flaws, and I'll get to what I think the biggest ones are in a second, but whatever his other flaws are, no coach deserves that, especially from his own board member. I mean, this is utter chaos at Bayern Munich, and it's a club that deserves better. It's a fan base that deserves better. Any fan base deserves better. And it's you just can't run a club like this. You can't make a deep run into a European tournament with this kind of nonsense going on. It's the last thing they needed, and Thomas Tuchel doesn't deserve this. Thomas Tuchel is not a bad coach in terms of X's and O's, in terms of tactics, in terms of what he's putting out on the pitch and his ability to teach players. I don't believe for a second that he cannot develop players. We have loads of evidence and plenty of examples of young players that he got the most out of. But I would not want Thomas Tuchel for my club, and given that he's going to be available soon, probably, his name is being linked once again to some of the biggest clubs in Europe, as though he hasn't had and already held most of the biggest jobs in Europe and flamed out as quick as he got there. And that's my biggest issue with Thomas Tuchel, is he rarely lasts more than a couple years in a stop, and at every stop there is some kind of animosity or riff with the higher-ups, with the management, with the administration, with the Board of Governors. Call it what you will, because every club is structured different and run differently, but every coach, every on-field manager and coach has a boss, and they have somebody they have to report to. And he has run his way out of his last 4 stops. And every time, one of the cited reasons, and this is not just rumors, this is what is cited by reporters, and there have been comments from the clubs, and even some comments from Tuchel, about disagreements with the club administration. And at some point, you have to look at the common denominator. And I've made videos about this before with Tuchel, back when he was with Chelsea, and yet it's happened again. And because he once won a Champions League, everybody's willing to look the other way on it. And I'm not dismissing winning a Champions League. He came in mid-year with Chelsea and took over a team that was underachieving and kicked him into high gear and got him to the finish line. And that is an achievement. And that is the sort of jump start Thomas Tuchel can give you if the players respond to him. And I'm actually a little surprised that it didn't work at Bayern this year, as they had a close call last year in the Bundesliga, and they wanted a guy who was going to get the most out of their players. And he does have a track record, Thomas Tuchel, of doing that at other places. He has had success at PSG. He has had success at Chelsea. But it was all so short-lived. Dortmund, PSG, Chelsea, and now Bayern Munich. That is his last 4 stops, the average duration of which was under 2 years per stop. And all 4 of them he has left because of some sort of disagreement or rift with the board, with the administration of the club. And this incident with Uli Hoeneß only exemplifies that. Now, Uli Hoeneß has just as much to blame here as Tuchel, and in this particular case, even more to blame. The timing of this is utterly just impossible to understand. It cannot be for anything other than an ulterior motive to try and hurt the club while Tuchel is there, to support his own opinions of Tuchel not being a good coach and the fact that he wants him out. There is no other reason to say these things now, whether they are right or not. And again, his reasoning for calling Tuchel a bad coach don't even make sense. But I don't think it would be incorrect to say that Tuchel is not fitting at Bayern Munich and he's not doing well there. I don't think that's even a stretch. I wouldn't say it 2 days before the biggest game of the year. That's just dumb. But I don't think it would be incorrect to say. It would be incorrect to say it at that time. But to say he can't develop players just doesn't make any sense, and it shows the vindictive nature of Hoeneß and what he's trying to do there. But a criticism of Thomas Tuchel is very warranted, and the fact that he voluntarily said he's going to be leaving this position mid-season felt like a preventative measure to not get fired and to at least be able to see it through, because I'm almost certain he would have been fired during the season at some point had he not already stepped 1 foot out the door. But Tuchel has this track record, even dating back to his first job at Stuttgart under Ralf Rangnick, who ironically may replace him at Bayern Munich. But he came onto Rangnick's staff and was a youth coach and lasted 1 year, and they let him go when his contract was up simply because they didn't want to deal with his personality. And that's the knock on Tuchel. He's an off-putting guy. He is an off-putting guy that people don't like to be around. And players have tolerated it. Players in short stints have responded to it. Well, as we saw at Chelsea. It didn't work this year at Bayern. The players did not respond to it, and clearly they did not have a season up to their normal level of success. But this is now 4 stops in a row. 4 consecutive stops in less than 10 years where the club's administration does not like Tuchel the person. Not the coach, not the results necessarily, but Tuchel the person. If Tuchel was more of a Jurgen Klopp kind of personality, an Ange Postecoglou, a more gregarious, friendly, likable kind of guy, which is not his obligation to be, by the way, but if he was, he probably would have been allowed to survive this season, coming in second at Bayern, and give it another shot next year. But because he rubs everybody the wrong way, and at some point we just, again, I don't know Thomas Tuchel personally, he doesn't talk to me, but we see trends, and you see trends in sports all the time. And whatever club is hiring Thomas Tuchel next, you better have a plan B coming in 2 years. You better know who his replacement's going to be, because you're going to have to do it in about 2 seasons. that is what we have seen, and there is no reason to believe otherwise. So if you're a club that you think you are this close to making a push, and you need a strong taskmaster to come in and drill the players, and who cares if he makes any friends, and who cares if he's likable, yeah, Thomas Tuchel's probably your guy, and that's fine. But that's why Liverpool doesn't want him. That's why he wasn't really considered for that job, because they want a long-term solution like they had with Klopp for a decade. And bigger clubs are going to, I would imagine, will start to tire of this act. But then again, he went from PSG to Chelsea to Bayern Munich. So what do I know? Big clubs continue to go after big names rather than take a chance on unproven names like Liverpool did with Arne Slot. And Thomas Tuchel will undoubtedly have another job again next year, and it will be a big club. And within 2 years, we will be hearing that he has alienated everybody in the front office and alienated the administration, and that they want him gone. Just mark it down, 2026, we'll be back here doing this same thing. But for now, what Uli Hoeneß did to Thomas Tuchel was an utter embarrassment to Bayern Munich. He needs to be reined in by somebody. I don't know who that is. And it takes an off-putting person, and it takes a bad statement to make me sympathize with Thomas Tuchel in the situation he's in right now. And that's what Uli Hoeneß's comments did. So that's how bad you know they are. The whole thing's a mess. Bayern Munich has too much money, too many resources, and too much talent to be run this poorly. And they need to get it together, or else they may lose their status in the Bundesliga, because Bayer Leverkusen is not going anywhere as long as Xabi Alonso is there. So time for Bayern to clean it up, but doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. I would love to hear your comments on this. Am I being too harsh on Tuchel? Again, I'm not knocking him as a coach, as a tactician, I'm knocking his man management. That is so important for coaching, and he does not appear to be very good at it. He runs himself out of every job, but I want to hear your comments. Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. Leave some comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for me down below as well, so you can follow the channel. And of course, check out the website pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.